Good afternoon to you. I'm Danilo Evangelista, and welcome to our tropical weather video for today, June 12th, 2024. We got multiple areas now to go over in the Atlantic. Things starting to get busy as the hurricane season comes in. So let's get started right away with it. Starting off with the National Hurricane Center homepage, as you saw in the title card, there are indeed now, and also in the title of the video as well, we're now watching multiple areas of interest for potential tropical development in the Atlantic. And this, for one of them, is actually an invest area, 90L. This is off the southeast coast. This is the first area we're watching, has a still a low chance of development over the next week, only a 20% chance, and in the next 48 hours is at a 10% chance. But there is still model support, though, that we might see something try to develop and consolidate as this area of low pressure over Florida moves off the southeast coast and into the warm Gulf Stream waters, or at least models like the European and the Icon are still showing some sort of development occurring with this. But it's still uncertain whether or not we will actually get development to occur with this system. And also, finally, after a long while, we've been talking about potential development in the Bay of Campeche and in the general Gulf of Mexico, Caribbean area because of our more favorable sort of window that we're getting in the atmosphere to come up. It is now actually being reflected by the National Hurricane Center that we might get development to occur here as well. They have a 30% chance over the next week or so. So about, I'd say, is that a 1 in 3 chance? Yes, actually, yeah, roughly more like a 1 in 3 chance that we might actually get something to develop in the Bay of Campeche, it seems like. And it is a part of what we have in the Eastern Pacific, where there's also an area of interest to watch. There's a 20% chance for potentially some sort of area of vorticity to kind of get going. And as I did mention, it is part of what we have in the Bay of Campeche, because as I did mention before, we do have this sort of Central American gyre pattern, which will result probably in something forming in the Eastern Pacific, and then it kind of gets sucked up into the Central American gyre, all this broad area of vorticity over Central America, and then probably end up in the Bay of Campeche, where additional development will probably occur. So that's what at least is being hinted at the National Hurricane Center. And you can kind of already see things sort of play out a little bit on satellite, especially with the area off the southeast coast, Invest 90L. It does actually have a designation for it as an area of investigation. And this is just so we could kind of get computer models running on it more specifically, and we could get further information on an area that we do have off the southeast coast. It really means nothing more than that. It's kind of like how we designate tropical systems like Tropical Depression 1 or Tropical Storm Alberto, but just in terms of instead of actually designating them as a tropical system, we designate them as an area of interest that could potentially become a tropical system, so we run extra models on it. That's really all there is to it. It seems a little complicated, but once you get the hang of it, I think the general idea is pretty straightforward. But you do see, in terms of the satellite, lots of rain, lots of really heavy tropical moisture, especially over portions of South Florida and the Bahamas. Regardless, once again, of whether or not Invest 90L does actually move off the coast of Florida, which it will, but most importantly, whether or not it actually does develop off the southeast coast, this will bring, and it is currently bringing right now, lots and lots and lots of heavy rain to South Florida. In fact, let's take a look at a satellite, not a satellite, a radar image of the radar site out of Miami. And you could see it's a complete and utter deluge across South Florida. We have flash flood warnings in effect. There's actually even a severe thunderstorm warning happening right now, because if you look back on satellite, you can see a lot of these cloud tops are very convectively active. Continuous convective bursts going on, and because of that, there are thunderstorms embedded within these sort of convective areas too, and it's producing lots and lots of heavy rain, and it's all moving very slowly and kind of staying over one area for a while. And the rain totals, and this is going to continue, it seems like, for at least the next few days as this moisture remains over Florida. And as this system continues to move off to the southeast, this rain will not go away for a while. And it's certainly going to rack up the rain totals. In fact, this is from NBC6 from Miami. And this just kind of goes to show how much rain has already fallen in Florida, as much as some places, Miami Shores, 7 inches, and the highest total right now in Hollywood, Florida, up to 10 inches of rain. I can imagine probably some of these areas are probably going to see as much as even a foot of rain in total, from when this is all said and done. But bottom line, whether or not this area that we have off the southeast coast will become an actual designatable tropical entity, it's still going to bring lots of heavy rain and gusty conditions to South Florida and the Bahamas as well. We can't forget about the Bahamas too. They're also going to get in on the action. And it's just going to be nasty weather over the next several days, but eventually, as this does move off to the northeast, it will clear out. Taking a look at the 850 millibar vorticity, though, associated with this, you can see, though, why we are looking at potentially development. You can see over South Florida where this low pressure area is located, there is actually some decent vorticity with it. It's kind of embedded along a front right now, kind of dragging up, and you can even see it too from the vorticity. It's dragging up energy from the Caribbean, and you could imagine all of this energy really is deep tropical moisture that is producing all the rain that we have over South Florida. And that's what it is. It's drawing that energy up from the Caribbean. But as of right now, it's still kind of attached along this front. But once again, as it does move off to the southeast, though, or to the northeast, right off the southeast coast, it should potentially break off from that front, and we will probably try to see some sort of consolidation of its own get going, and maybe, just maybe, we might see this develop into a system off the southeast coast. In terms of sea surface temperatures, it's definitely looking possible. This is the sea surface temperature analysis map, and this is kind of a general view of generally the Atlantic right now, or I should say more of like North America. But anyways, you can see right off the southeast coast, including especially right off of Florida, some of these water temperatures, 28 to even 29 degrees Celsius, probably right off of Florida. And the threshold that we look at typically for development is right around lower 70s, lower 80s, upper 70s, which translates to around 26 degrees Celsius. And right up along the Gulf Stream, too, right off the entire southeast coast as well, we have those general marginal 26, 27 degrees Celsius readings, too. So generally, as this does emerge off the southeast coast, this will emerge over warm waters. And that'll certainly be a plus in terms of development for it, in terms of whether or not it does go on to develop. And just to kind of further that image on the sea surface temperature anomaly map, obviously off the southeast coast and even in the Gulf as well, because this did actually do pretty interestingly well, I should say, in the Gulf. Yesterday, there was actually a visible sort of low level circulation associated with 90L when it was off Florida in the Gulf yesterday. And you could definitely see how there was something able to spin up. Look at how warm these sea surface temperature anomalies were in the Gulf, easily 2 degrees or even higher in Celsius above the long-term average. So the water was definitely warm, definitely was able to help prime something to get going quickly, and that is especially why off the southeast coast, some of the models are seemingly trying to spin something up, and maybe we might as well get it. And then obviously, as we zoom out in terms of the picture in the rest of the Atlantic, things remaining very warm, especially in the MDR, and we went over that several days ago with the new forecasts released by everybody, especially by CSU. They continue to call for a really above normal season, and you could certainly see why the expectation is for that. And even when it comes to the Bay of Campeche and Pacific as well, water temperatures are more than enough above normal and ready for development. So that'll become our next concern for who will see tropical development, or where we could see it once we get to it. But generally, the Atlantic is warm, and especially off the southeast coast, things are warm enough for some sort of development to occur. So, with that being said, let's actually see what the models show in terms of development. This is actually the 18Z GFS, and I think it's out in time enough that we'll be able to see the system off the southeast coast. And you can see the GFS too. As of the analysis, it does show some area of vorticity over Florida right now. That emerges off Florida within the next 24 hours, and then off the southeast coast it is. You can see there the GFS, I guess, does try to show some sort of vorticity get going with it. Although not really that aggressive. You can see some development does occur. It seems like there are some sort of closed isobars in here, so that probably represents maybe some sort of closed low level center gets going, but then hours 54 to 60 and then into hour 72 kind of just opens back up and is not really that organized. So GFS not really that into that system, but if we compare this at hour 72 from the GFS to the European is actually a lot more aggressive on this system, at least of the 12Z run. You could actually see even in the analysis too, when this was over Florida, it actually had quite a bit of vorticity, as we saw from the map from the 850 millibar vorticity earlier off of Florida. I guess the European is taking that into consideration. I mean, look at this. Even in terms of hour 36, that already looks like some sort of bona fide system that does get going right off the Carolinas coast. Hour 48, it's actually pretty, it definitely looks defined. You can see that there's some sort of concentration going on with vorticity. And I also do want to mention it does actually look kind of close to the Carolinas on the European, whatever system does get going from 90L. Does kind of pass to the east though. You could also see the European kind of strengthens this system as well. This does get kind of energized from a trough that is off the northeast, I think around southeastern Canada, and that kind of boosts this off to the northeast very quickly, especially past hour 72, and then off into the North Atlantic it goes after that. And then once we get over and done with 90L, then we got to focus our attention in the southern Gulf, in the Bay of Campeche, where if you look at the European, you could already see it by hour 120 and into the next week or so. We do get some sort of development to occur in the Bay of Campeche. Does look somewhat broad. It's not really going to be anything that does happen. Not saying anything pretty will happen, but there's definitely some sort of signals that do occur in the European and even in the Eastern Pacific too, generally associated with the small area that we're watching in the Pacific. You could see that there's some sort of consolidation that occurs on the European, kind of gets involved in this huge envelope of energy over Central America. Once again, part of our gyre setup, and then it emerges over the Bay of Campeche. So yeah, there is signals on the European. They're also hinting at potentially development to occur in the Bay of Campeche as well, right where the NHC has it mentioned. Let's take a look at other models too. The Canadian model, the CMC as well, shows this. They even show the Eastern Pacific area as well. And also, interestingly enough, they kind of have something spinning up in the Gulf in very short order over the next several days. Although I would kind of disregard this because this is only the CMC. But I think the biggest feature we want to look at is right here in the Bay of Campeche around hour 168, right in line. Let's actually look at the European again. That is right in line with what the European shows in terms of a developing system in the Bay of Campeche. Then it moves into Mexico, and then it kind of lingers around. And I actually want to bring back the European after this because on the 12Z, and it just goes to show that actually it does seem like once this kind of system, whatever, does get going in the Bay of Campeche, after that does move in, does seem like the European wants to linger our sort of Central American gyre setup for a little bit longer. It does kind of seem interesting. Maybe kind of goes back into Mexico, but then some sort of energy kind of reemerges over the southern Gulf. So maybe that might be a possibility we need to watch. I mean, it is June still. It is generally still the area that we would look at for development, and it does actually seem like conditions will still remain favorable all the way till the end of the month in this general area of the Atlantic and the Western Hemisphere as a whole. So maybe we might as well just get development that we need to watch for not only into mid-June, but maybe late June as well. We'll have to see, but obviously I think the bottom line is in terms of development, there are definitely multiple areas to be watching for over the next course of the next week or so. And once again, I'm pretty sure of it that within the next week or two at most, we probably will have our first system of the hurricane season Alberto form by then. It's definitely coming soon. I'm definitely sure of it. With that being said, though, I'm going to end it off for today. Not much else to go over besides that. Stay safe. Peace, love, and kindness to you all. If you have any comments in the or if you have any thoughts, definitely post them in the comments. Any questions, I'll answer them as well. I'll try to get to them as soon as possible. With that being said, have a great day. Have a blessed one as well. Stay safe. Peace, love, and kindness to you all. And we will talk again tomorrow.